So I guess that brings us to part 3. So all of a sudden I had this great revelation, I guess, and it was crushing, and I just felt my faith was completely demolished. I had nothing left of it other than the fact that God was who he said he was. And that was the only thing I believed. And once he told me to go back to the beginning, and I realized, okay, the beginning is Genesis 1:1. So I'm going to go to this whole thing with a lens that I don't know anything. That because I had already felt like I had been lied to, and by well-intentioned people that really believed that they were serving God with all of their hearts, and that they really loved God, but they were also misled. And so there was this feeling, it was a mixture of both a curse and a blessing, I guess if you will. I felt so blessed to almost have another chance, but curse because nobody believes like me. There's nobody I can go to. Everyone's going to think I'm crazy. So that started a journey for probably a year and a half, where equal part of absolute amazement and awe and am I going crazy? Like, I don't know. I really honestly question myself all the time whether or not that this was reality, or whether or not I was losing my mind. I know it said that, like, the midlife crisis, when it happens, right? And so I was honestly curious. I was wondering. I was scared to death. Also come to the realization that I could lose everything. There's no way my husband's going to tolerate this. There's no way. It took so many years. We dated for probably I don't know, probably 15 years. I don't even know. Before we got married. Nah, it wasn't that long. It was a long time though. 13 years maybe. I don't quite remember, but for a long time. And here, this is the man I was holding out for, and all of a sudden I realized I'm at risk of losing him. And there was still the other part of me that said truth is worth it. Though I didn't want to lose him, God knew that I did not want that. But I was also thinking my family are going to think I'm crazy, because though I wasn't raised in a Christian home, I had a lot of religious family members, and I can imagine how this is going to look weird to them, and how I'm going to be pushed out. The biggest fear of my entire life was to not be included, and not to belong to anyone. And my very thought and my heart is drawing me to a place where I could risk losing every single person in my life. So, I mean, it wasn't lost on me how that was so polarizing, right? But I wanted truth desperately, and so I thought I could lose my church. I could lose all the people I fellowship with. And that kind of happened. That's another story, though. It's still a painful one. It's very painful. Never in my life did I think that I would lose a church for loving God so much, but that happened. But again, that's another story for another day. But so I started going through this strange parallel journey of feeling totally, deeply, absolutely loved by God, and surrounded by him, and by like almost this special club. And not that I'm special, because I know there have been people that have misrepresented me, but it's because I didn't even deserve it at all. And I feel like it was his choice. It wasn't. The only choice I made was to choose obedience, and I think that's what he was searching for. But so, okay, I started going through this journey, and I thought, I'm never going to go to another human being, so I don't know. I'm just going to have to read the Bible. And I would pray and pray and pray, and like, God, reveal things, and please don't let me go crazy. I don't want to look for things that aren't there. I don't want to be convinced of things and be like one of these conspiracy theorist people that are so convinced of all these off the wall things that people will label them as nutcases. But I was honestly wondering myself, am I a nutcase? I don't know. I don't. Does anyone that's crazy think that they're crazy? No, I think they think that they're normal, but people just misunderstand them. So I was in that boat as well. So I started Genesis 1:1 and I started reading, and I came to something that was kind of like a little light bulb moment in Genesis 3, and it said, God said that let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the lightness from the dark. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, dash, the first day. So it's like, oh, that's really interesting that it was evening, and then there was morning the first day. So it's like, okay, really, truly, he did set up his days as evening to evening. So, okay, so the rabbit holes, I talked about that. So I was like, Google was my friend and my enemy. So I had to really be careful of the information that I got and what sites. But I wasn't allowing myself to hear from one source. I would Google like multiple sources. We're talking probably 10 or 12. And I would, it wasn't majority rules either. It was an odd process, but I just felt like there were things that I would read, and I just knew it in my soul to be true. There are things that I read, and it's just like, I don't know how that's true, but I know it's true. But I was being a Berean. I was double checking and triple checking every single thing, and I was checking with the scriptures, and I was checking with historical documents outside of the Bible, outside of spiritual and religious things. Because today, it's such a great time to be alive right now to do research, because there's so many PDFs of ancient documents and things that, and I realize that a lot of those ancient documents are not going to be in English, of course, but, I was able to, there were translations, and there were, I think that I was doing due diligence to the research that I was doing. I really honestly believe that God was leading me to some things. Some of the weirdest things that started happening. And I have no explanation with this other than God just did a thing. I felt like he said that he would show me. He would show me. I would get things in my email. I would get things that would pop up that I was not researching. And I know you say, yeah, you start researching things on your phone and similar things will pop up. That is true. But how do you explain I get things in my physical snail mail mailbox that were answers to questions that I would have that were so off the wall, weird, just odd, just things I didn't order, things I didn't type in my home address, which I'd rarely ever do that type of stuff anyway. But things were coming to me. The radio, I'd be in a store and something would happen, some radio, or I would be walking through a parking lot and I would hear somebody else's radio in their vehicle that would just be like, what? Like, just weird. I'm just going to tell you, it was almost as if information was being downloaded from so many sources. And they were answers to questions that I had. I just felt like I was so in tune to God with so many things. And it was like the right question would pop in my mind, and I would Google and I would find these answers. So here I am looking at the scriptures, and I'm saying, okay, well, that was the first day. Well, then I get down, and the fourth day, there's another light. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky, and to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. So I was like, well, that's interesting. There's two accounts of light. And so what was the first one? If it wasn't the stars and the moon and the sun, and like, what was that? And so I started Googling it, and then it was brought up like, well, you have to go back to the original Hebrew because the Bible is written in Hebrew. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm willing to learn any language as long as it has characters like we do in English. So German, Spanish, always Italian, any of those languages. I've always enjoyed languages, and that was kind of the deal I made with God years and years and years ago. Like, I'll learn any language as long as it is similar. Characters that are unfamiliar are intimidating to me. So Greek, nope. Chinese, nope. Japanese, nope. Russian, nope. None of those. I'm not going to learn any of those. But it was, all of a sudden I started getting this. It was like clarity. And then I read about or, how that means light. And or is something different than just physical light. It has a physicality to it, but there's a spiritual nature to that word. And so I realized that was a separation, that the world's default position is darkness, and that God put his light into it to separate, and that was called good. And so I was like, that is just amazing to me, right? That is just so awesome. So I go through this, and the rabbit trails from one thing to the next. Every question that I had that would pop in my mind, it just would be answered. It wasn't always the same way. It wasn't just me Googling and finding an answer. It wasn't just, there was no one source. It was coming from everywhere. And it just seemed like God put this hunger in me, this thirst, unquenchable desire to devour his word and to devour everything I could get my hands on. It was like brand new. Truly like a little child that always asking why and what, and just all the questions. I need to know more. I need to know more. I need to learn more about my world. And this was becoming my world. And it was just such an amazing, I don't even know. It was unbelievable. So I get I start devouring the Bible, and I'm reading more and more and more and more. And then, I come upon a point where I was just like, well, all these things that I thought were true, and they're not. I know, one thing I know is that the food laws, they were changed. I know that. I know that the food laws are changed. Because that's in the New Testament. That's not just an Old Testament thing. That's also in the New Testament. And that was changed. So I just I'm going to find that. And so I'm Googling. I'm like, okay, well, yeah. That's Acts 10. That's Peter, Simon Peter. And he, it was about the sheet. I remember the sheet, that whole story. And so I just felt like God said, well, just for my own peace of mind, for your own peace of mind, go ahead and read it. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to read that. Yeah, because I know that that's there. I remember reading that, and that food laws were changed. So I started reading it, and it talked about the sheet coming down, and 3 times, and there's animals of clean and unclean animals. And he brings it down, and he says, go, Peter, kill and eat. Or an angel, I think. Go, Peter, kill and eat. And he says, no, my Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean. And 3 times this happens, and the sheet was brought up to him. And when that vision was over, then Cornelius's men, which Cornelius was a Gentile, he was a Gentile believer in the Jewish Messiah. And he sends his men to him, and he's up on the rooftop. And just like every other person, I read all of this until the very end of Acts 10. I read all of Acts 10. And then it just goes on and says, can anyone keep these people from being baptized with water? They have received the Holy Spirit just as we have. So he ordered that they be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ, and they asked Peter to stay with them for a few days. Period. Done. And I was like, yeah, so yeah, he realized that, you can eat anything. And then here this Gentile is summoning him to come with him, right? So, in the story. And I felt this pressing in, and God said, keep reading. You're not done. And that never occurred to me, because chapter and verse, the end of the chapter is that, just like any book in English, once the chapter is over, it's a new thought. It's like a paragraph. Once the paragraph is a new thought is now introduced, right? I felt him say, keep reading. So I decided I would. So then it goes on, and Peter realized that it wasn't even about food. It was about, don't call men, people that I have deemed clean, don't deem them unclean. And I stood shocked. Like, oh my gosh. If that's the New Testament, how many times have I read that and I never made that connection? Oh, no. That can't be true. I'm finding a way around this. Like, I can deal without pork, really. I mean, I'm okay with that. But I like shrimp. I love snow crab. And I actually like bratwurst. There's so many things. It's like you don't realize that you even really enjoy until you just realize, maybe I can't have that anymore. But no, I know that we can have that stuff. That there are no food laws anymore. Jesus did away with that. And I searched, and I searched, and I searched. And I'm not saying it's a salvation issue in any way. I don't feel like it's a salvation issue. It's not like that you eat pork and you're going to go to hell. But I can't find where it's done away with. And because of my whole heart is seeking obedience to him, because I serve him, he doesn't serve me, I said that I would be that slave that was it Exodus 11 or 12 or something, I can't remember, where it says that if that slave decides that they love their master and they don't want to leave, that master is to put him up against a doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl, and he will be his slave forever. Well, I'm that slave, and I don't ask questions, and I don't have to be proven to in order to be obedient. I just am obedient because he asked me to. And because my heart's ultimate desire is just to please him above all things. It has nothing to do with gaining my salvation. It has nothing to do with getting points or crowns in heaven, or gaining any favor. It's a position of soul obedience to the one that I could never pay back. The thing that I'd been searching for my entire life was to be included. And he did that, and he called me his segala, which means his special treasure. And that in itself led me into this whole journey of Hebrew that my heart burst open. A language that I said I would not learn because it didn't have the same characters as English. God said, yeah, you're going to learn it. And I said, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not interested. And he says, you will. You will. You're going to learn it. Maybe not so much. I'm not so much into that. And he's like, you're going to love it. And I'm like, I don't know if I will, but, if that's really what you want. And then it's like, okay, I love it. I love it. I can't describe to you how it breaks open this whole treasure box of jewels that you never ever knew. Because if you're looking at the surface of the water and just seeing how calm all that is, you're never going to see the treasure that's buried under. And you just crack that open and it's like, wow, didn't even know it was there. And so that is part 3.